Welcome to this special edition of Brownsville Tech Live. And in the house tonight, we've got a special candidate who is running for city commissioner for at large A. His name is Tino Villarreal. Mr. Villarreal, welcome to our show.
Daniel, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
We are definitely excited about having you on the show today, Mr. Villarreal. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Tino Villarreal? Where he comes from? What he's done? Can you give us a little bit of insight into who you are? For those of us that
Sure.
are not familiar with you.
No, trust me. Even those who are, it's always good to go and give people some background knowledge that they may not know about me. I was raised here in Brownsville. I'm an only child of my parents, two very amazing parents, two amazing people. My father also Celestino Tino Villarreal, which is my name as well, and my mom, who passed away about a year and a half ago, Victoria Villarreal. Just two amazing, very solid, strong Catholics, and they enrolled me in private school, Catholic school education since I was a child. So I attended St. Mary's Elementary. From there, I went to St. Joseph Academy, which is where I currently work right now, and then continued on to study and get a bachelor's degree in business administration, where eventually led me to move to Austin, Texas, to work for the organization called the National Hispanic Institute, where I was the associate vice president of education, and I got to travel the country. I got to travel all over the state. Obviously, my home base, which was the Rio Grande Valley in Brownsville, to recruit kids on leadership development for a span of 5 to 6 years. Um, After that, I moved back to Brownsville, wanted to work with my parents. They've always been in the seafood business, so I opened up Tino's Seafood Restaurants and quickly franchised them. We had 12 restaurants within 2 years, and eventually selling the franchises, and focusing on a passion of mine, which has always been working with youth. Somehow I got involved in volunteer coaching at St. Joe. I found that as a very real big passion of mine. I really enjoyed time here. It doesn't feel like a minute of work. It's just it's just a gift that God has given me, and I took that on full time. I became head coach and athletic director here at St. Joe in 2015, and since then, I've just always worked with our community through the same organization that I used to work in. I sit on its national board of directors as a trustee. And here locally for 25 years, I've been spearheading the program called Tip of Texas, the Community Leadership Council here, which is part of the National Hispanic Institute. And we work with roughly over 120, 150 kids every year from each grade level. And on leadership development, we send them all over the country, and hoping to really make an impact in their values and political views and personal views on how they plan to be engaged citizens. So when the opportunity came about to really think about walking the walk instead of just talking it and run for city commissioner, I think that right now at the time in my life is right. I was dealing with and nursing ill parents. Like I said, my mom had cancer. Oh, she fought hard for 3 years and we lost her. My dad's in great health right now, and he knows how passionate I am about being engaged with our community. And really, when the opportunity came about, I think he also was a big encouragement. He reminded me how my mom would have wanted to see me run at the time, but it just wasn't the right moment. And I feel that right now it is.
Yeah. Well, definitely, that's quite an impressive resume, Mr. Villarreal. So you're actually the head coach for the St. Joe Bloodhounds. Is that true?
Correct. I'm the head football coach, and athletic director.
Oh, wow. Wow. So you're actually in charge not only of the football, but the other programs as well.
All sports, yeah, all
Wow.
sports, including our dance team that won the state championship this year, and
Uh-huh.
our cheerleaders. And so it's a fun mix, working with all ages. We're a middle school, high school, so I get to work with kids from ages 12 to 18, male and female of all walks of life that have different special interests. and ultimately, sports or any vehicle ultimately is an important way to help mold and help young kids' values and belief systems.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think one of my cousin's kids actually plays for you guys. Jerry Martinez.
Oh yeah, yeah, of course, our all-star basketball player.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about you running. Obviously, you're running for commissioner at large. And I'll just flip over to our virtual theater screen. It actually used to be a virtual theater. We had theater seats and popcorn and all kinds of stuff. Let me
Right.
get the virtual iPad running here in a second. Give me 1 second while I do this. Sometimes it actually misbehaves, but give me a second here. I had it up and running and it disappeared from me. So give me a second while I get it going. Okay. 1 second. It takes a while. There we go. Cool. So let's flip over to our virtual theater screen. And we've got our chat box on the side. Nobody yet chimed in yet. But basically, what we've got here is our virtual iPad. And it is an iPad, by the way, just for
Right.
anybody who is doubtful. Um, so basically, what we have here is the entire district. Actually, it is broken down into different districts. District One, District Two, but the district that the position that you're running in encompasses all the districts. Correct?
Correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the entire city.
Right. So unlike some of the other candidates that may be running in specific districts, the entire city gets to vote for you. So you should be on every ballot across districts.
That's right.
Yeah. Now, when is the start of um, early voting?
It's April 24th.
April 24th, and it goes to all the way till.
It goes literally almost right before the election day, which is May 6th.
Okay. All right. Okay. So it goes all the way till I think that's Saturday, and then May 6th is
Correct.
the election. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the map here, I believe. Used to give
Yeah,
me a more.
it's quite a big undertaking. I don't understand. Well, obviously there's a lot of things that were done that we probably don't understand why,
Yeah.
but I don't know. There's no difference between a a district commissioner or an at-large commissioner. I think the only
Right.
difference is um, the amount of ground you have to cover. I mean, I don't understand the reasoning for it,
Yeah.
but it is what it is. It's just a lot more demographic signs, block walking. I mean,
Yeah.
and ultimately, who knows if in the future six districts would serve the city better than four and two at large. But right now, for the way it serves, it is what it is.
Yeah. And I believe that every commissioner has an equal vote, right?
Correct. I mean,
Yeah.
every commission has an equal vote. Everything is completely the same. So, like I said, I don't know at what point that was determined, right? But
Right.
or why. But for now, I'm learning a lot about what it takes to run a citywide campaign, and it's a huge undertaking.
Right. Yeah. Well, definitely for those other commissioners running in the smaller districts, they may not have to walk as much as you do, you know. So,
Yeah, and just and be trying to be present all over town too. I mean, it's a big city,
yeah,
so
it
it's a lot of
definitely
ground to
is.
cover.
Well, that's one of the things I wanted to talk about a little bit as we switch back to our other screen is obviously a lot of things have changed in Brownsville since most of us were kids. I mean, I remember a time when, there was very little opportunity in Brownsville. If you wanted to go get an education or major in something like computer science, like I did, I literally had to leave Brownsville to get a degree, back in those days. So luckily, I made it back. You know, uh, back to Brownsville. But in those days there was very little opportunity, and of course, a lot has changed. Since then. We have new industries coming in. We have this special relationship with SpaceX, that continues to grow. Um, what do you think we need to do to move forward and keep that momentum going? Especially how do we nurture that relationship with SpaceX? I mean, as there are people out there that, have reservations about them, as well as some of the other projects going on. What do you think we need to do to nurture that relationship? But even more than that, what do you think we need to do to expand and continue with economic growth?
Well, let's start first with if there's one thing, I mean, everyone in Brownsville I've learned, we all have opinions and we all have a right to have them. And there's a lot of beef. People have different reasons to love and hate SpaceX. If there's just one, I mean, I heard it both sides. Where are you? And when it comes down to SpaceX, and
Right,
if there's just one thing that I think that we can really do, as far as commissioners, is what what actions or policies we can come up to and collaborate, with federal government to really mitigate the impact that SpaceX might have on our environment,
right,
but I really don't. The beach is open to everyone. I think people are really concerned about the beach and what it will do. And so far, it's only closed a couple of for those launches, and then it's open. It's so there's a lot of other challenges, but that's one that I think as commissioners we can kind of really dive into. But the trade-off for it, is just such a huge, vast impact on our economic growth and development. Just look at how many families SpaceX is bringing and how many more future jobs, and they haven't even done an official launch yet.
right,
Looking at the possibility for this, I mean, I see it as opportunity. And
right,
and one of the biggest things, Daniel, that for me, you have to understand, there's a certain paradigm in which I live under, and I was trained through leadership development with the National Hispanic Institute, and that's because and I'm going to get on my little soapbox for a split second so people can understand me.
yeah,
So the way to look at the Latino community and Hispanics in this country and the way we train leaders, you can train leaders to look at the past and to look at the deficits and the negatives in our community and fight for those equalities and operate, and there is nothing wrong with that. That is the first thing we do as leaders. Is you obviously are been trained since you're a child in school to fix problems.
right,
And so in order for you to lead, you have to find a problem to fix. And,
right,
and you have to convince people that you're the ultimate problem fixer, you're the best one out there.
right,
We look at things a little bit differently. It's how do we seek opportunity in the community, and how do we expand community equity building?
right,
How can we build off of opportunities?
right,
Okay, not obviously we have to fight the good fight and we have to look at issues and social ills and address them, but some of those are phenomenons that might never be addressed.
right,
Okay, and how I prefer to look at things from the glass is half full, from my community is beautiful, from my community is amazing, from how do we look at opportunities and grow from there. So I see Starbase and I see SpaceX as a great opportunity for Brownsville. It can create a lot of positive impact. It can obviously it's already created jobs and opportunity. It's going to ask and require our community to prepare kids for jobs that don't exist yet and to
right,
really increase our brain power down here.
right,
It's asking us to do that, and that's an opportunity. It's going to create economic growth and development, and also for our small businesses, because it's going to also bring hopefully a lot of tourism and change the way the world and other people see Brownsville. Instead of seeing it as one of the poorest demographic areas in the country, it's going to see it as some a place of value and some place of how prestigious it is for Brownsville to have a partner like SpaceX. So I prefer to look at things from that perspective. And then we can work around all those other things. I mean, there
right,
are other ways for us to take care of our environment. But the opportunity that SpaceX brings is enormous. If it wasn't, then I think that we can take a look at the problems that come
Right.
from having a partnership like that.
Right. Well, yeah, definitely. That's one of the things that I've had discussions with a few people on because I hear, different sides and so forth. And, I've worked in the maquiladora industry for a long time, probably 25, 30 years. I don't work in it anymore. But one of the things that always happened when companies relocated to the area is that they brought their supply chain with them. A lot of the suppliers that supplied their raw materials and things like that actually moved to Brownsville. There's companies like Jamestown Plastics that was out there on 511. They didn't exist before, but they had customers down here that, dealt with plastic and injection molding, and it made sense to move, to where the action was, so to speak. So
Mhm.
I believe
Absolutely. And it
that,
will continue.
yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm just saying it will continue bringing jobs that we don't even know or needs that are even yet to be on our radar. And that's the opportunity.
Right, right. That's definitely the opportunity. But, as you say, there are people that are concerned about the beach and the environment, and rightfully so.
And they
Um,
should be.
yeah,
So should we,
yeah. I
right?
mean, we should, right? I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm no friend of the Sierra Club. I've knocked heads with them a few times, and every time I say this, I get somebody that really gets mad at me. But I said they've been launching rockets in Florida for 50 years, and we've not lost one single alligator. I mean, I say it as a joke, but
No,
what I
no,
mean.
no. But you are absolutely right. We have to look at that
Yeah,
and see how, as a city and as commissioners, and collaborate with port and county, and how we're going to take care of our environment.
right,
It doesn't have to be a trade-off.
right.
I do believe that both can coexist in this community, and we have the ability to do that and do it wisely.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that when I had Mr. Coscos on, I've had him a few times, we discussed things about SpaceX and so forth. And, one of the concerns was the closing of Highway 4. And yes, if you want to take the mindset of a regular road, you know, as far as access to a road, yeah, I could see their point, but there's new technologies coming up. We've got, Elon Musk and the Boring Company looking at building tunnels. Right now, they've got a tunnel that they're building somewhere south of San Antonio. There is no reason why we couldn't build a tunnel that links South Padre to Boca Chica or even to Brownsville. We talk about a causeway and a causeway and a causeway, and we've been waiting for a causeway for like ever, right? But that's old technology. I mean, we could build a tunnel. We could do all different kinds of things now that maybe wasn't possible a few years ago. It means jobs, economic growth, so just a thought.
I'm, and that's exactly those are the opportunities that I'm talking
Yeah,
about. It gives us an opportunity to be at the cutting edge and at the forefront of technology and technological advances.
right.
And that's something that Brownsville could be, again, reframed as a city that is one of the leaders in the industry of technology, instead of the poor city or the city with the most obese people and heart disease, and how we are
Yeah,
depicted. And I do believe that those opportunities in turn can shift
right.
our entire whole community as far as how we view ourselves and how we react to that. Because in order for you to live in a society that is elite, it does change a little bit of how you raise your kids, and how what perception it is. It's no longer the raise kids to leave Brownsville, but raise kids to actively participate in this booming, beautiful, growing city.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things I wanted to touch on, and I know it's going to be something that's going to come at you on your very first couple of weeks as commissioner, is a current project that is ongoing. And basically, if you recall, 2 years ago, we suffered through a pandemic. It was pretty horrifying for a lot of people, including myself. I mean, I lost quite a few family members because of COVID. But
I'm sorry.
one of the things that we discovered when first COVID appeared on the scene was that we had to transition not only employees to work remotely, but we also had kids that had to go through virtual instruction. And one of the things that we discovered is that kids were lined up at our local schools to get these devices, which were internet hotspots.
Mhm.
As you heard, probably these weren't the greatest. They were kind of slow. They worked sometimes, they didn't work at other times. Uh, but definitely we discovered that a large portion of our citizens did not have access to the internet for whatever reason. Whether they couldn't afford it, whether they lived in an area that just didn't have it. I mean, there was all kinds of reasons, and we discovered that kids were lining up for hotspots and they were lining up for Chromebooks, and it was just amazing that in the 21st century that we still had issues like that. And the city obviously has made some strides. I know that they're working to bring fiber connectivity to the city, and the goal is 100%. Um, I will say, because I've been in the IT industry for a long time, that 100% is a noble goal, but I've been out there laying fiber, running wire. I worked in the cable industry for a long time. Actually, I worked for a company that manufactured the first cable modem, the surfboard modem by Motorola. And so we developed that product, and we also developed a product that you would connect into your Sega Genesis system, which allowed you to play the Sega channel. And one of the things from a manufacturing standpoint, as we serviced our customers, which was Time Warner at the time, Charter Communications and so forth, was that these companies were cable companies. They weren't necessarily internet companies.
Yeah.
So during the first few years, I mean, it was kind of hard dealing with these people because they didn't know a whole heck of a lot about the internet. And so they struggled and stumbled, but they got better at it. So what I'd like to know is knowing that we could run into obstacles to 100% coverage. Uh, what can we do to ensure that that commitment does happen? I mean, I've talked about in the past with some of the other candidates about other emerging technologies. We're talking about Starlink, we've got 5G, we've got other satellite services. There will be places in the city that we probably won't be able to reach. Um, should we go back, after all is said and done, and ensure that we do get to 100% coverage?
Okay, well, this one is very close to me, a project that's very close to me. Like I said, I've been involved in our community behind the scenes, but you have no idea the amount of contacts and people that I've gotten to meet throughout my time in leadership development. And some of the consultants that we're working with the city are actually used to be roommates of mine
Ah,
in Austin.
yeah,
So when it comes down to knowing a lot about this project, I tend to believe collaboration is going to be key because we're not just publicly funding this. There's a lot of private funding. There's a
right,
lot of grants. There's a lot of partnerships involved in this. And there's going to be a lot of discussion that's going to need to be had. It's going to come in phases. And whether those are determined or going to be looked at, I mean, I'm running for city commissioner because those are important conversations to have. I do believe that somewhere I heard that this first phase, I mean, from talking to my friends and talking to some other people, and they were excited about the broadband project. They're like, well, we want to run it straight through the city to downtown, into the economic business district. I think that's phase one, and I believe that residential becomes phase two.
right,
And so whether that's changed or not, I mean, I did listen to your podcast, and obviously 100% is important, but you have to start, the conversation has to be had.
right,
What is the purpose of it? What is the purpose of having broadband? Like you said, is there a way? I mean, I tend to believe that I mean, um, I have internet,
right,
and we have internet here at the school.
right,
Uh, but there's a lot of citizens right now that don't even have the access to internet. So whether the kids were even getting tablets or they were looking for the hotspot, because even if you give them a tablet or they have their iPhone, there's no way for them to even have connectivity or to have the ability to do what we're doing right now, which is zooming with something that's stable and
right,
looking at what the future is going to bring.
yeah,
Those are super important questions. I did hear my opponent on here with you, I did see that podcast, and she brought up a great point. You know, she talked about Southmost
Right.
and starting in communities that really need just internet connectivity first and foremost. Now, I do believe that that's an ambitious goal because we're talking about you just talked about it yourself. You know, these it's not about it's a tricky question. It's not that I don't believe that people in Southmost deserve the internet first. It's
Right.
it's how are you going to lay the fiber?
Exactly.
Because I would love to tell you that I could bypass the map
Yeah.
and go to the tip point of Brownsville down by the Rio Grande,
Yeah.
but ultimately that fiber is going to be laid from north to south,
Right.
and how you lay that fiber is going to be crucial of how you're able. It's like creating a highway, you know, that is
Yeah.
is how do you create its mainstream fiber line to where hopefully other people can tap into it,
Right.
and we can collaborate and partner with not just the city broadband but with current entities and other internet companies that exist, so that we can collaborate and be able to provide 100% of the citizens with internet. And I know that we have an ambitious goal of charging people only $40,
Right.
but there has to be a plan where we can collaborate and team up, where maybe the main pipeline is coming with the city broadband, and then we find strategic ways to partner with people and give them incentives on how they can help us distribute it rather quickly.
Right.
Because if not, we're going to be here for a real long time wishing that 100%, and in reality that may take a very long time, as you know.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, I've laid fiber, and I tell you what, I mean, there are obstacles, obviously mine were shorter runs than anything that's being proposed, right? But I'll tell you what, I've seen it all. I had one time uh, a landscaping company. I don't know what this fiber installer did, but he ran a fiber line, and he kind of looped it up through a pipe. And this guy came with his weed eater and whacked the fiber. I was down for like a month.
Yeah.
So it has to be laid right. It has to be done right. You just can't run it under a ditch or something like
Oh
that.
no, no,
I
I totally I know about it because when I worked in for the National Science Institute, it's at a ranch actually outside of Austin in a little town called Maxwell, Texas.
uh-huh.
And the amount of internet that we needed to run a national organization in a little remote town had to we dealt with the ability of enough bandwidth,
Yeah.
so we had to actually work with companies to want to lay fiber down in Maxwell, Texas. And people were like, why don't you all just sell the property and move to downtown Austin?
Yeah.
And ultimately, you know, the battle for us was because we have a future vision of building an actual institute there, and we need the acreage.
Right.
But it sounds easy. Like I said, I lived it, just trying to expand the bandwidth of the fiber that was in Maxwell. And so when you're looking at the city of 200,000 per census and trying to distribute it all the way down, like we said, to the extremes of the city, because if you go down the highway, you know, you're still looking at Billy Mitchell, the airport, you're looking at the
Right.
port of Brownsville. And how do you expand in that kind of that mileage is going to be harder than we think. So partnerships are going to be important. A lot of collaboration, a lot of lobbying and knowing lobbyists, because we're going to have to really get behind this and work as a team if we really want to make this a reality for Brownsville.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's a very, very noble project, and we can't afford not for it to succeed, because obviously being connected is another plus for our city, in
Yes.
more ways than people can imagine. So it's definitely something that I know that's going to hit you up, one on your very first few weeks when you become commissioner. One of the
Well,
things,
like I said, I hope so. And the edge that I believe I bring to the table is the ability to know. I'm talking from a roommate standpoint. A lot of our consultants and
right?
contract people that helped us get the project done.
Yeah. Let me ask a question. I don't think I've ever asked this before, but I do hear other podcasters talk about, how Brownsville is, or it's perceived that it's difficult to do business. That, the other cities in the valley apparently are easier. I'm not really sure that that's the case. I mean, I posted an article just this past week where, McAllen is landlocked. I mean, we've always known that they've been landlocked, right? They don't have much more growth to move around. And so one of the things that their economic development council is actually doing is they're actually telling the companies that are thinking of moving to McAllen to go somewhere else in the valley because they just don't have the space. So that's one of the things that I mentioned in my post was that we don't have that problem. We got plenty of land here in Cameron County, and I've always said that, we've got resources that Hidalgo could wish for. We've got two major airports, we've got a port, we've got a great beach, we've got a freeway that is not congested, that it doesn't take you 30 minutes to get across 2 miles like it does over at Bicentennial towards the west. Uh, but the complaint still is that we are difficult when it comes to making it easy for businesses to move here. A lot of people complain that the permitting process is just too slow, too many regulations. I know that they've bought some software to make things easier, but what else can we do to convince, businesses big and small that, Brownsville is business friendly?
This is going to be a that's a good question, Daniel, but I'm going to answer it in I hope by the end of this podcast you'll realize for me that what you see is what you get, and
Right,
I wish that I could answer it in a political fashion, but
right,
the reality is that from what I have seen and
yeah,
from things that make me want to put my name on the ballot and make me want to work as commissioner for the citizens is that we need to bridge uh, relationships, not tear them down.
right,
We need to learn to work with each other and not against each other.
right,
We need to stop holding grudges and ego contests.
right,
Uh, I do believe that the city of Brownsville can accomplish so much more, and yet we fight over things sometimes that are very petty that divide the big things and
right,
that delay the big things. And so my knowledge of a lot of the city, having sat on two boards, I know and I have spoken face to face with every sitting city commissioner and an elected official. I know a lot of them personally, and I think that the bad rap that you get by exposing yourself that way is the compadre system and
right,
whatever kind of illusion that is out there that there's a certain group of people that want to lead the city a certain way and it's my way or the highway kind of thing and that you're
yeah,
just trying to get votes. And so you create this doomsday effect instead of looking at opportunities where I do have friends who sit on the commission. I have talked to every commissioner, and it's learning how to work together because we're all going to have different opinions. We're all going to have different belief systems. We're going to argue with each other, but you can't let yourself get personal.
right,
And a lot of people get very personal, and then their feelings get hurt, and then just because you didn't vote for me for that, I'm now not voting for this or delaying the process. And so I do believe that the commission needs to lead by example, and that way we can put like I always tell the kids I coach, right? Monkey see, monkey do. So if I'm not being a leader by example, how can I expect the people of Brownsville and those employees to follow a certain culture and values if we don't display it on the floor and we don't display it with each other publicly? I
right,
think that city needs to work with the commissioners of the county and our county judge and the mayor need to have an excellent relationship. I
right,
think the city of Brownsville needs to have a phenomenal relationship with PUB.
right,
And right now, those things, whether they exist or not, they're not apparent.
right,
And we have to make them very apparent that we're all working together for the future of Brownsville. And when you do that, I think you put a lot of vote of confidence into the LNGs, the partnership with SpaceX, the future projects and companies that can come in here because they see that that the right arm and the left arm and the right leg and the left leg are all working body parts of this massive thing called Cameron County, in which Brownsville is the biggest part of it.
Right.
And so we have to learn to work together. And there's a lot of entities with a lot of special interests.
Right.
And I know that that's what people run. That's why you hear a lot of campaigning of transparency and break the cycle, and because there's a lack of trust in the community. And I think that it's not because it could be for a million. We can always look back at something and pinpoint the
Right.
flaws. The reality is, what are we doing to make it extremely evident that the culture of Cameron County and Brownsville is that we can argue and we can fight, but at the end of the day, we're professional, we respect each other, we don't hold grudges, and we're pushing the
Right.
city's agenda forward.
Right. And I agree with you. I think there has been a cynicism that is built up. I mean, sometimes rightfully so, right? Because of certain
Absolutely.
situations.
Everyone is entitled to argue
Right.
and to not. We're not all going to sing kumbaya and hold hands, and like that. That's not a good way for the city to grow either.
Right.
But as far as taking it personal and not being able to work with each other, and then saying things sometimes that you have to learn to be a professional. You
Right.
can't go out there and you can't take back words, and so you have to be very meticulous with how you handle people publicly,
Right.
right?
Right.
Because there's only a certain amount of things that you can do to take back before certain people are going to hold a grudge. It's human nature.
Right.
And but if those things happen, again, I'm going to go back to just experiences. I know that only sports, but that's how we mold our youth.
Right.
I will never allow a coach in my program to argue with another coach in public.
Yeah.
And if other people think that that's okay, that's fine, but it's not okay with our culture.
Right.
Out in out in the public, out on the practice field, in a game, you will never see two coaches fight each other. That doesn't mean that they're not fighting indoors
Right.
behind closed doors, but we have a certain level of trust we have to give our students and the parents and the fans, because there's a certain brand and a culture that has to be created when someone sees a St. Joseph Academy logo.
Right.
The same thing goes for the city of Brownsville and
Right.
Cameron County. There's got to be a certain level of image and culture that is instilled and forced upon for us to exemplify. And it starts with the leadership up top.
Yeah. I mean, I've been in management position. I had a very simple rule for my employees. I said, "Look, I said, outside these four walls, we're a team. Inside, you can argue with me, you can bitch at me, you can yell at me, and we may disagree. But outside, we're a team. And we'll settle it. We'll figure this whole thing out. But when we're out there, we're one team and we have to present a unified approach. And I think that's a responsibility that we all have. I mean, when I started this podcast, I'll be honest with you, um, I really didn't know what I wanted to podcast. My plans were to have a political show, but honestly, I really didn't want to have one because I saw what was out there on the landscape locally, and it was all negativity. It was all gossip. It was all this. It was all that, measuring who's up and who's down. And, I consider myself a journalist, and they should act like journalists and be responsible, you know? And so I think that we as podcasters, have an example to show the rest of the world that we can be fair and honest, and I mean, you're right. We just have to be more unified as a team. We don't necessarily have to agree on everything.
And we're not, and I hope we don't.
And I hope we don't, that's
I wouldn't want, my players would not want a coaching staff trying to come up with a game plan for victory if we all just said, yeah, we're fine with that. Let's do this. I mean, any successful organization is going to have multiple people chiming in and saying, I think it should be this way, I think it should be this way. And that's the whole part of game planning, is
right.
is to go into the war room and come up with the best possible solution. And ultimately we all agree that that is the best plan for our victory, and we all get behind it, and it's not a an underlying, like, you don't go tell the kids, yeah, well, I don't think that's going to work, but that's what that coach wanted, but I didn't
Yeah.
want this, because then you divide the group, and your troops don't want to battle for you, and
Right.
the same thing for a community. All of these problems, and I agree with you, and I thank you for your podcast. You are very professional. There's a lot of podcasts out there that are, they just want to get ratings and views, and they love to pin people against each other.
Right.
They love to ask questions and then ask questions to grab sound bites that
Right.
somebody else hears, and then and before you even take oath of office, you've already have a perception over
Right.
certain people that may have said something about you that you don't like.
Right.
And so, does that really benefit the city?
Yeah.
No. You have to have thick skin. You have to be able to learn that this is part of the job. I learn it every Friday night that I'm a football coach, because if we win, the kids are amazing, and if we lose, I'm the biggest idiot in Brownsville. And it's awesome. I embrace that. That's what I do when I watch professional sports. I love
Right.
my Dallas Cowboys, and I always, when they lose, I believe that I could coach them better than the coaches out there, which might not be a reality, but it's my right as a fan,
Yeah.
and we can't allow those things to sway our decision making.
Yeah. Well, as I always say, it's always easy to be a Monday morning quarterback,
Absolutely,
One of the things I want to touch on a little bit is obviously, and I've asked this question to a lot of the other candidates, is, we had the situation with PUB, a few months ago with an audit and the Tanaska project and stuff like that. And I don't really want to get into the intricacies of all the details because that really doesn't really matter at this point. It's water under the bridge, as I say. But we do have an opportunity to improve things moving forward. And what do you think, and this is just based on your opinion, what do you think needs to happen for PUB as an organization to restore the public trust between its citizens and its their own utility company? What do they need to do? What would be your expectation for the new leadership running PUB, in the next few months to make strides to bridge that trust once again? Because there has been a little bit of a breach in trust. And so what do you think that
absolutely.
what do you think needs to be done? And I'm not necessarily asking about monies returned and stuff like that, and hopefully there is an opportunity for that. But what are your expectations if you are elected from PUB to kind of bridge that divide that has been created?
Well, the biggest thing, because I sat on the PUB board, and I can tell you that it's a very complex organization. It's a very complex and very unique. Um, even learning just about kilowatts and wattage and energy and power and wastewater, and the amount of things that PUB is in, and how you produce rates and sell and buy energy and reduce rates and whatnot. It's so complex that most board members sit on there. And I was there for 18 months, and in 18 months, I still felt that I was learning.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how do you instill trust, and how do you regain the public's trust? Trust is built off of one thing, and it's transparency.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is huge, huge in any organization. Transparency is so important. Anytime people feel that you're giving them 80% truth, or that you're still holding some cards to your chest, you're never going to build transparency. And the whole Tanaska issue started and continued, and was there because people now look back, like you said, they're Monday quarterbacks. Well, you all should have done this. Well, had we known, right? Like, while I was on
Right.
the board in 17, well, had we been given access to a lot of things, I'm pretty sure we would have made other type of decisions. If the commissioners from the city were a little bit more involved in PUB and had more transparency, that doesn't mean they have to sit on the board. I mean, that's not what I'm talking about. But as far as reports from PUB to the commission. Those are sometimes issues that if you're a commissioner and you don't want to read a 100-page review, it's hard. Look at
Right.
right now when people are looking at the city charter and looking at just the audit report. People want to read the summary. They don't want to read the full audit report, and then they
Right.
go and make decisions based off of summaries. So having a stronger communication base is, to me, the answer within the management to the board of directors, from the board of directors that are appointed by the city commission to the commission,
Mm-hmm.
and the mayor, who's an ex officio, who can also let the city commissioners very aware of things that are going on, and also regain the trust of the people by allowing them to understand what's going on. I've sat with a lot of people who ask me questions about PUB, and when I give them a little bit of exposure into the things that I was privy to and things that I did know, they're like, "Wow, I never even heard that PUB had done those things." Not in a bad way, in a good way.
Right.
And so, for both good or bad, there's just a lot of things, and they're not kept from the people on purpose. Okay. They just, we have to instill more transparency, meaning it has to be something that we're trying to do. Not, it's not something that they're trying to hide. It's just not something that I think is up in the forefront at doing things where everyone is aware, and it's simple and it's easy, and you don't have to read a 100-page report. There's summaries that you understand what's happening with rates, when we believe they're going to be increased, when we believe they're going to be decreased, when we think something's happening in the trend of power and energy. We want to be able to know those answers because the citizens demand it. There's part of Brownsville that gets to have Magic Valley, and they go, "Well, why is my Magic Valley bill a lot less than PUB?" And we get into the whole monopoly and whatnot. Well, Magic Valley owns a lot of wind power, right? And
Right.
PUB doesn't own as the amount of wind power that Magic Valley has. And so the questions do come up. Well, should we open the market? And what does that do to our budget? And so people don't know how that impacts and affects the city's budget when we're one of the few cities in Texas that has our own public utilities board.
Right.
So all of this, I'm sorry for ranting, but it's
No, it's all right.
transparent transparency, communication within inside of PUB, from the administration to the board, from the ex officio and the mayor and the board members to the commission. I think that kind of transparency, it's too late when you're reactive,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
when it's like, "Guys, let's report a problem. We need a joint session,"
Right.
which is what's happening with Tenasca. And then commissioners are trying to learn a 5-year project problem in a 3-hour board meeting.
Right.
Not going to happen.
Right. Right. Yeah, which you kind of answered my question. I think there was a mayoral candidate earlier this week on another podcast, and she was advocating, opening up the market. I'll be honest with you, I've never been totally convinced that that's really the solution to lower rates. Um, I mean, I know that a Magic Valley bill doesn't include water and it doesn't include waste and stuff like that. And if you add those on top of the Magic Valley, I think most people find out that the PUB bill is probably on par with the Magic Valley if you had those options, right? Because I don't think that the kilowatt is much different. I think the last time I checked, PUB was like 13 cents a kilowatt, and maybe Magic Valley was like under that slightly. So there really isn't a variation, so to speak. I mean, I get into these discussions with people all the time. Magic Valley, customers. Oh, well, my bill's cheaper,
Yeah,
and
and CPL and all these things that people want to discuss. I think the reality that sometimes people don't know, a bigger issue to address for me when we start discussing those things are, okay, um, people want their roads fixed, people want drainage fixed,
right,
people want and they have a right to, like, say, "What's happening? I haven't had drainage or good drainage or potholes." And what we are yet to understand is that we run a city that currently, I wish I could tell you, we run a city that's in the black.
right,
We run a city that's in the red, and it depends on resources from PUB.
Right.
And so when you start cutting their market, and you start cutting it again, this is just information.
Yeah.
This is information. I'm giving people information.
Yeah.
If you start doing that, all of a sudden, well, what projects do you cut from the city budget?
Right.
What offices do you shortchange?
Yeah.
Well, we need to be more active with permitting. And well, what happens when you cut the budget by 10 to 14 million dollars?
Yeah.
So what programs suffer? What goes down first? Less police force, less firefighters, less money for an already existing. Those are all existing problems, by the way.
Yeah.
We're officers short. We're fire department short. We're drainage. We're behind on drainage, streets, and roads. I mean, there are so many challenges Brownsville has that, again, you can mask it and take away from here, but guess what's going to end up happening? You're going to increase taxes over here.
Right.
And I'm sure people won't want to hear that. And
Right.
so there's got to be a way for us to, again, capitalize on the opportunity of being one of the few cities in Texas that has its own utility.
Right.
So
Yeah.
there has to be, but you hit the nail on the head. How do we restore trust? And trust only happens with transparency and communication.
Yeah. And one of the things that you mentioned about roads, one of the things that I know people don't understand a lot of times is there are roads in the city that are not necessarily city roads. Boca Chica Boulevard is a state highway, right? You know,
Yes.
so obviously, there's state responsibilities when it comes to maintaining that highway. And I
And
don't know what,
a lot of collaboration with TxDOT, with the state. And so again, relationships. How do
yeah,
you build good relationships with your state rep, with your
right,
state senator? How are you building a good channel and bridging Brownsville through Cameron County to Austin? Because there's a lot of different. It starts when things get earmarked up there.
right,
By the time they trickle down here,
right,
right? And a lot of people tend to forget that and just think that it's just money that's sitting there that the commissioners just don't want to utilize for that.
yeah,
And that's sometimes not the case in the majority of the times. It's just the funds are not there, or we need to do a better job lobbying for them and building great, helping our state rep and helping our state senators pass it through the state capitol.
yeah. One thing I haven't talked much about, but I know you were on another podcast recently, and one of my fellow podcasters wants us to get rid of the parking meters downtown. And I actually agree with him, but I actually went downtown this week to check out a bookstore down there, and I had plans to eat down there, but one of the things you discover pretty quickly is that even if you got rid of the parking meters, you still have a parking problem.
Mhm.
And obviously, there's a lot of interest in revitalizing downtown, but there's a parking problem, and I'm not sure how we can get people down there if they can't park. I mean, what can we do? Do we need more parking garages? Do we kick out the folks that are using the parking garage that got built a few years back? I mean, even if you got rid of all the parking meters, made free parking, we just don't have enough space down there to kind of, get people to go down there. But it definitely is a challenge. And it doesn't matter what time of day it is.
I think it's twofold.
Yeah,
First, I do believe that we are kind of landlocked, and buying out people or kicking them out of their homes down there is a challenge and a problem.
yeah,
Two, there are other ways to reimagine certain spaces that is going to cost, again, a lot of money to do, and those
right.
are things that we need to look at how we're able to find grants and collaborate with partnerships for that as we try to continue to focus and revitalize downtown. But the reality also is something that I put on my campaign. One of my biggest flagships that I'm running on is how do we reshift the mentality of our youth and our community, because it starts with youth. By the time you're 30, 40, 50, my age, it's too late for people to really change their habits. And I'll tell you that Brownsville is one of the few places that I've been at, and especially down here in the Rio Grande Valley, where people will circle a parking lot at HEB for 20 minutes.
Right.
And if they don't find a parking spot, Heaven forbid they park, down at the very end and walk.
Right.
And so we don't like to walk. We don't like to, and that's something that needs to also start changing in our community. There is parking. It's just, guess what? It's not, if I'm going to go visit a restaurant downtown or the bookstore you went to, we want to be within that block.
Yeah.
If I'm gonna walk more than a block, well, there's no parking downtown.
Yeah.
I myself have lost 130 pounds. I try to make a transformation in my life.
Yeah.
So I purposely need to get steps in. So I have no problem finding parking downtown because I don't mind walking 5 or 6 blocks.
Right.
It's not a thing for me. It's not a mental perception or perspective that I have. For me, it's easy to say, oh yeah, I found parking here. I went to the E Bridge grand opening the other day.
Uh-huh.
I had to walk 8 blocks, but
Wow.
those were beautiful 8 blocks. I got to see a lot of stores that I never knew existed. I got to see a lot of shops that were being redone and great. I some people honking at me because they know that I'm running for commissioner, and that is what downtown living is. Look at New
Yeah.
York City. I mean, I'm not comparing us to the size of that, but I'm
Right.
saying eventually just look at downtown San Antonio, downtown wherever you want. You have to park and walk, even if there
Yeah.
are parking garages. Sometimes you find a garage that still takes you 20 minutes to get to your destination.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you another question. I haven't asked this question to anybody before. You know, but you do hear that the Brownsville Sports Park is underutilized. I
Mhm.
don't know how true that is, but what do you think we can do to better utilize that sports park? I mean, I know I've heard recently, with this Sombrero Fest thing that some people were advocating moving Sombrero Fest over there, but I'm not really sure if that really will kind of lose the whole thing about Sombrero Fest being downtown. But they keep on bringing this thing that that the sports parks is underutilized, and of course you're in sports, quite a bit. I mean, what do you think? Is it underutilized, and what can we do to make better use of it?
I believe that it's utilized frequently by our citizens. It's underutilized if you look at it as a economic development entity because it was created by BCSC. I used to chair BCSC, and I worked real close with Ray Arellano and his staff at Brownsville Sports Park that do a phenomenal job. Again, they're bringing the TAF games this summer. We've hosted them before. That should bring quite a bit of people and fill up our hotels. We do have an issue with hotels. There's not enough beds. There's not enough hotels with SpaceX continuing to grow. Where do we kind of grow in that regard? But as a sports guy, I could tell you right now, Brownsville is the capital. I will venture to tell you, like we really are. Brownsville is the capital of soccer in the United States of America. I believe it to the root. You look at the Hannah Eagles, Rivera Raiders. You look at Porter, Lopez. They've all played and won state championships this year. Our soccer team at St. Joe went to the state championship for the first time and competed in a state championship. We were first runner up. But when you look at soccer and the development of youth down here, it is so vast and we're so good at it. And yet it crushes me to know that our kids go and train in McAllen and our
Yeah.
kids go and train in Harlingen. And we have to travel to go to tournaments and we don't collaborate with the state and federal clubs to host camps here, to bring games here. To I think that through soccer and through youth sports, I'm talking kids,
Hmm.
is where people, and what better place you think, well, when they're older, you don't want to travel all the way to Brownsville to play. But when they're young and you have a beach and you have SpaceX and you have the culture and the food and the local businesses that we have and the artisanship, when you really spin it that way, it becomes a destination spot for families wanting to travel to great weather, sunny conditions, to take their kids and also make a vacation out of one of the premier places of soccer in the United States of America. And I think that that's a possibility. That's something that I've been pushing for, and that's something that I plan to continue pushing if elected commissioner.
Alrighty. Well, I think we've gone about an hour. We could go on forever. I've really enjoyed the conversation quite a bit. I hope it wasn't too bad.
No, 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 no. Like I said, super informative, and that's what journalism is ultimately. I deal with a lot of journalists in sports, and it's gotten real lax. You
Yeah,
got a lot of journalists that instead of trying to gather information, they've already made up their mind of what side the story wants to go, and they just
right.
want to ask questions and cross-examine people into that world. And so very informative questions, very important questions for Brownsville. I do hope that if someone listened, they got an idea of where I stand on these issues. Obviously, creating a plan. We're gonna have to do round two and ask, well, what's your plan to make that happen, right?
Yeah,
Because anyone can shout out great ideas, but it takes a plan
yeah,
and to propose ultimately what commissioners do. And one thing that I will toot my own horn at, as far as something that I consider myself an expert, is in policy making, because I coach it, I teach it. That's something that I did nationally. And so an idea is an idea. Can you make it a policy, and can it be a well-written policy? I look forward to maybe coming back on and talking about the proposals on the ballot,
right,
because a lot of that has to do with great ideas that in a certain way right now maybe weren't written as good policy.
right.
And so there are some in there that again, that Brownsville should have more control of PUB board members, but look carefully at how the policy is written. And I think that I can bring to the table a little bit more expertise on writing better policy.
Right. Well, any last words for our viewers out there that you want to share? I mean, this is your moment to, give your closing statement.
Well, I think that if my closing statement is, you're going to have options. Obviously, when you go vote in the ballot, I'm going to be the last one on the ballot. So I didn't actually draw. I know that William and Susan drew first before me, so they got positioned at the top, and so I'll be the last person at the at large. So read through those names, and when you look at your candidates, I do hope that you ask yourself a question. And the most important part is are you looking for candidates that want to build bridges, that bring a vast knowledge and expertise, that are able to help in the policy and rewriting a lot of things within the city that are important to the future of this community? If so, I think that when you do your research, I think I'm the strongest candidate in that regard. I know that my opponents are great people. I don't know them personally, but I'm not one that looks at trying to be a mudslinger and run poor campaigns. I applaud them. It's been hard to be on the campaign trail. I've taken a lot of mud myself, and that's okay. It comes with the territory. But whoever it is, we have to rally behind them. So really look at who they are and what they represent and what value you think they bring to the community right now.
Yeah,
Like, we're at a crucial moment right now. Everybody brings great qualities, but I think the opportunities right now are going to be how we resolve the PUB issue. I think it's going to be about the broadband. I think it's going to look at redefining how the local boards are assigned, and how you look at those things. And all of those come with policy. And lastly, my biggest thing is youth development and collaboration.
yeah,
Those are very important to me. We have to start paying attention to our youth. We have to develop a strong workforce. We have to develop the thinkers of tomorrow, not just the learners of tomorrow, right? I do believe that we're at a great pivotal point where Brownsville needs to be a destination city, not an exit city.
right.
Other communities are seeing it that way, yet we're not yet. And I
Yeah,
think that starts with how we bring programs that already exist, like Leadership Brownsville. But how do we start Leadership Brownsville, and how does that impact teenagers,
right.
right? We have to start them there. Ultimately, my goal is to increase the supply side of leaders, educated individuals with strong brain power, because that's what it's going to take. The way things are looking at with LNG and SpaceX and other entities is that I don't want to just import. Obviously, it's what we're doing. We're importing brain power. But
Right.
look at you, Daniel. You're right here, and you're from Brownsville. I
Yeah.
think that we need to purposely recreate and Daniels and to really kind of force Brownsville kids to want to see it as an investment opportunity, as a destination city.
Yeah. Well, definitely, sir. We appreciate you coming on, and we wish you the best of luck. And believe me, if you get elected or if you don't, you're always welcome on the show.
Well, thank you very much for
So,
having me. And yeah, that hour kind of did fly by. I know that there's a lot of other things out there pressing that maybe people wanted to hear about, but hopefully we'll get another chance. We still got
yeah,
a month or so before early voting, so maybe we'll get a chance to sit down and visit again.
not a problem. Definitely, sir. Well, good luck, and we'll be talking soon.
Thank you very
Everybody,
much.
this was our special edition for tonight. Once again, the election is May 6th, and early voting starts on the 24th of April. So
Yes.
be sure to either do the early vote or get out there and vote on March 6th. I mean, sorry, May 6th.
Right.
So we thank everybody for watching. Dino, it was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, sir. Good night.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.